Moving on with the agenda, we already had some information about, how the state of Texas and how Alamo Workforce and the Texas Workforce Commission, can help your business. Now let's put, those programs and those, employees of yours and those resources that you have in your business, let's put them to work. And to that effect, we assembled a panel to talk about how to do business globally. How many of you here are doing business internationally at this point? Wow. Glad to see that, probably most of you are doing business international. We're going to, go through this process of showing you really how to go out there and, look for opportunities outside of our borders. Mind you that 90% of the world's buyers don't live here in the States, they're outside. So if you have a, a successful business here in San Antonio, here in Texas, or here in the States, there is, a tremendous amount of potential buyers of yours overseas. We had invited Ambassador Steve, to come here and talk to us, which we're very honored to have him here, and you're going to hear from him today. We also invited our good friend Sid Silveira. He represents the BRATEC, which is the Brazil-Texas Chamber of Commerce. Also a strategic partner of ours, Salvador Apud. And to moderate the panel, we have David Leister. So will you help me give him a welcome to David Leister? Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, and really appreciate seeing you all out here. Very excited about this as well, and I'm going to be very, very brief, but I do want to point something out here. Being a globalist, having a passion for all things international, and of course a very, very proud American, I'm thrilled. We even have people that came from not just internationally, but we have people from different states here. So I'd like to recognize a few people. And if I don't mention you from out of state or out of city, just let me know, raise your hand. But first I want to recognize Mrs. Pamela Carlton. Pamela came here from New York. She's the Chief of Strategy. She's the Chief of Strategy at the Medici Group. Again, came from New York to be with us today. Wow. And thank you. And we have Royland Reed, who came in from Dallas. Royland is the founder and CEO of Consumer Market Insights. And finally, I'd like to also recognize our good friends Zeffirino and Brenda Banda. They are here from Phoenix with Banda Group International. Now, is there anybody else who's from outside of the Hill Country region or a little bit further? I know we've got a lot of folks from Austin. And we do have, isn't that wonderful? We have a lot of folks from international locations who are with us streaming live, so this is fantastic. Well, with no further ado, I'd like to go ahead and introduce our panelists here. We have some amazing presentations lined up for you all. Our first speaker will be Mr. Salvador Apud. Salvador is Executive Vice President of U.S.-Mexico Consulting and also Senior Partner of ITIM America. U.S.-Mexico Consulting is an international business development consulting firm with offices in Austin, San Antonio, Guadalajara, Mexico City, and also in Monterrey. And Salvador's group, they support small and medium-sized businesses to expand their operations to the U.S. or in Mexico. And they help with strategic planning, hands-on implementation. Strategies include organic growth, acquisitions, joint ventures, and greenfield operations. And their firm also cooperates with the Texas Office of Economic Development. So that's good to know as well. And they help basically supporting not just Mexican companies investing and operating in the U.S. or Texas, but also U.S. companies looking to get into Mexico. So Salvador has been married for 38 years to his lovely wife Atala, and they have 4 children. 3 daughters. 2 of them are engineers and work for Microsoft, and the third one co-founded and operates a U.S. nonprofit on the West Coast. And then, of course, there's Salvador Jr., who's in Austin with you. So please, let's welcome Salvador Apud, who will be speaking on Mexico. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Hear me? Is it working well? Well, good morning, everybody. I'm really excited to be here. It was worth the early rise this morning in Austin. 4 in the morning to come here and be on time and beat the traffic. But it's really exciting to have this nice crowd. I appreciate the invitation from Orestes, from David, and all the previous presentations of the personalities who were here before me. I'm really passionate about the work we do. I started working, I'm originally from Mexico. I had 3 companies, 250 employees there. I worked for the Mexican Chamber of Radio and TV and so on. But in 1998, well, I'm not from Texas, but I learned the phrase. I came here as soon as I could. And let me tell you now, my daughters are working here. They're engineers working for Microsoft. They're contributing to the life of this country, nonprofits fighting the war hunger. And I'm so proud to be here. This is a great country with great opportunities, and I always felt welcome, and I appreciate that very much. My work as a consultant internationally, I've been 20 years doing work for global corporations. One of my firm originally is ITIM International. They are based out of the Netherlands and Finland, Helsinki, and we are the leading consulting boutique in what is called cross-cultural management, how national cultures affect management, how you put together teams for people from different cultures and nationalities and create cultural synergy. That's what we need in this world. We need to learn to work together and using our differences as a strength, not as a problem. And we have the tools and the technology to do that. And by learning and working with large corporations, integrating global teams and so on, I learned a lot about that. Now, 7 years ago, once you are a small business, medium-sized business person, you're stunned already. You never forget that. You love small business. It's a different world. And I was always thinking, why is it the case that medium-sized companies, overall, you check the statistics, they fail when they go international. 95% don't make it. Why? And why big corporations are doing it? Now, mid-sized companies, small-sized companies, they are actually the blood of the country. They create the jobs, they provide the jobs, they're not going anywhere, and they provide the money and the economy for every community. So we need to find a way to help them avoid being pushed to the corners of the market by the big corporations. And that was kind of the thinking behind the creation of US-Mexico Consulting. I learned from the large corporations, for example, there are incubators, there are accelerators, there's money, there are incentives, and still it's not working. And I've seen the same thing in Germany, I've seen the same thing in Mexico, I see the same thing here in the States. Why is not working if you have all these efforts? And we managed to figure out what the problem was. The problem is that, I don't know how many of you are familiar how a big corporation expands internationally. We know. First, they become dominant in their domestic market, so they have a strong cash flow behind them. They have strong organizational processes, business processes, and everything. Then they go abroad. Now, what few people know, and nobody talks about it, the first attempts to go abroad are very ineffective. Do you know how they manage to get over that? They just throw money at the operation until it works. That's something a small or medium-sized company cannot afford. So, in a nutshell, what is the challenge for mid-sized and small-sized companies to go abroad? It's very simple. Why they cannot deal with it? Because they cannot deal with the cost and the complexity of the learning curve of doing business abroad. So that is the challenge. And none of these things are addressed in the regular incubators, accelerators, international training, learn how to export, that's not the problem. And the main issue is that, and I say this with all due respect, is that people who design these programs are not global business people. They are not international. And they're typically 2 groups of people, and again, I say with this due respect, I don't mean any kind of putting down anybody, but it is basically government economic development people, and they are professors in universities. They know nothing of the mid-sized, small-sized business world, And when they create the programs, they're copy-pasted from the university programs. And that does not work. A mid-sized company does not need a marketing study. They need to find a customer right away and get $20,000 a month in cash, and then we're going. Okay, that's all we need. There is no this businessman approach to the design of all this program. And that is the problem. So we put ourselves to work to solve the problem by designing it in a way so we have a business model and we understand how to do it and how to make it happen the way mid-sized, small-sized companies work. So that's then I approached one of my friends, dear friend David Davis, one of the largest law firms in Central Texas, and we came together and put together U.S.-Mexico Consulting. This is one of the phrases, I found this and I love it. And we say U.S.-Mexico because this is a natural marriage, even though Washington, D.C. and Mexico City politicians are always at each other's backs. It's not true. Mexico and U.S. are complementary economies. We're joint, we're brothers and sisters. We're together in this. And Kennedy put it the best way I could find. Geography has made us neighbors. History has made us friends. Economics has made us partners. And necessity has made us allies. Those who got us joined together that no man put asunder. John F. Kennedy. And that reality still resonates even stronger today. I'm sorry. I don't know what I'm doing here. Okay. I hope it works. Now, I have a question for you. Which country will become the more dominant economic power in the 21st century? What do you think? Not the U.S.? That's good. Well, that's a good guess. Thomas Friedman, New York Times, about a few days ago. Okay, it's Mexico. And it looks like counterintuitive, but we'll find out why. I'm going to give you for the big frame of why is Mexico? What is going on here? Now, the region with the largest economic potential in the world is, again, North America. Joe Biden, just a month ago, while he was in Mexico. Okay? It's not China, it's not India, it's right here. Okay, now interesting, this is the Chinese president. Mexico today is heavily expanding its international presence and attracting the attention of the whole world. He was in Mexico in June. Interesting. You know, we have heard all these stories about security in Mexico. Nobody can go there. You can get shot by the drug dealers. It's like Afghanistan. You better wear your weapons and armor before you go there. Okay, look at this. 6.3% increase in foreign passengers arrivals in airlines. First semester 2013, 65 of them from the U.S. Okay, now look at this. This is the International Women's Forum. This is Pedro Aspia, former economic secretary of Mexico under Salinas administration. And he said, talking about Mexico, China, oh, come on, you're not taking advantage of. Look at China. I always get that when I'm speaking. You Mexicans, you're not taking advantage of this. You've been NAFTA and so on, never worked. I can talk a lot about that. For example, we have two different political systems, which is at the core of the main differences between Mexico. We're a democracy in many ways. We can say anything, but elections count in Mexico. And we have already 2 years of two periods of opposition parties in power. Now look at this. What is going on? The yuan is appreciating. The wages in China have been growing. Today, Mexican wages are 90% lower than China. Stratford, a think tank from Austin, already reported this in October of this year. The U.S. market share, I'm sorry, there's a typo there. China grew 1.1%, Mexico grew 1.6%. Now, interesting, not only wages, look at the transportation costs. If you send a container from Shanghai to Chicago, it will take you about $5,200 in 22 days. If you send a container from Monterrey in Mexico to Chicago, it will cost you about 60% of that in 4 days. Now, this is so real that about 3 weeks ago, we got a call from a Chinese company that is have operations and manufacturing plant here in San Antonio. They wanted to talk to us. He said, well, the Chinese company called us and they say, Salvador, we met here we have an office here with our partner, Hector Garcia, and said, we need to buy in Mexico a motherboard manufacturing plant for appliances. And they have plants in China, and here in the States. So why do they want to go to Mexico if it's cheaper in China? Because the reality is even Chinese know that they need to come now to Mexico to stay present in the U.S. market. There's a Softec, a Mexican company, is very important in IT. They had operations in China and in Mexico. Now they're shutting down their operations in China because the Mexican ones are more effective and more efficient. Okay, look at these numbers. Mexico today exports more manufacturing products than the rest of Latin America put together. The trade between the U.S. and Mexico is $1.5 billion every single day. What are we thinking? We need to get a piece of that. Okay, we don't need all the billions, but if we get $1 million a day, that won't be bad. And I would just put this to comparison. The U.S. spending about $300 million a day in Afghanistan. Okay, Laredo, Texas, again, the largest crossing point of trucks in the world is right here. Okay? Now, the IMF, again, why Mexico potential for U.S. companies is driven by national structural reform. That's the most important thing. The new government, so the old three is back, the 70-year-old party that was in power in Mexico, they're back in power, and they know they want to hold the power because otherwise they'll be put out of the presidency again, and they know they need these reforms. Calderon tried it, didn't work. Why? They were blocking Congress, same thing, same political wrangling as everywhere. Now they want to make them happen. So there is economic reform, energy reform, telecommunications reform, educational reform, and they all have passed, and we're expecting the two ones that are connected, the energy reform and the financial reform, if you want to call it like that, because Pemex, which people don't know, pay for 30% of the federal budget in the country. Okay, so if they want to give autonomy of management and administration to the company, they're going to have to change that format. And they will need to raise more taxes. We are one of the lowest compared to in the percentage of the GDP taxes in the world, in Mexico. So that's happening, and particularly I will talk about the energy reform a little later, but that is going to create tremendous business opportunities for everybody that can work in those fields. Of course, few people think of Mexico, but sending a container from Mexico is the same sending a container from Texas or from New York or from Seattle or from anywhere. It takes the same time. The border is so efficient in terms of trade and transportation that it goes through it because just in time is being very well implemented. Skilled labor, skilled engineering is a trademark of Mexico for a long time. Even many of the maquiladoras, which is the assembly lines at the border who went to China early on, 10 years ago, they were back in Mexico in 4 or 5 years because they could not find the level of technical skills that they needed in China. High productivity, and again, Mexico has 44 trade agreements with in the world, the largest, most open country in the world. So that's an interesting thing. What else? Now, energy. This is important. Pemex, which has been like the Mexican flagship for oil, and is part of like, they have developed this culture that we in Mexico, oh, Pemex is ours. It's part of the Mexican thing. I can argue about that, but that's the way most people feel about it. It's going to be open for the first time to foreign investment in a very interesting way, similar to the Brazilian Petrobras model, where the Petrobras even has part of the shares in the stock market, and they do joint ventures with many companies. So they're kind of following the Brazilian Norwegian model, and I think it's a pretty good idea. And the expectation is there's going to be an investment of $800 billion in the next 5 years. Okay, so that's giving you an idea. They're building right now a large pipeline system in Mexico to import U.S. natural gas to Mexico. You know, there's a surplus of natural gas in the U.S., so that's where it's going. Okay, and I had a construction company in Mexico, mid-sized, revenues about $50 million a year, and they said, can you help me find a partner in Texas, they mentioned this, Houston, that has experience with pipelines. We need a partner to provide us with the technical skills for pipelines. We'll do the bidding, we'll get the job, we'll get the subcontracting here, but we need like a stamp of quality that somebody has the technical skills and the capabilities and the knowledge to do. Those are opportunities for companies like you might have here in the Minority Business Enterprise Group. Expected areas to be open to private investors, storage, distribution, transportation of all products, exploration, production. I mean, you have already there Halliburton and Weatherford and all of those companies are already there. So what is the idea here? Well, how medium-sized and small companies can work together? This is important. What you have in the U.S., you have market, you have financial support, you have technology that is not available in other countries. Mexico has low growth products. There's a market. There's a chance to work. So we need to bridge these two here and explain it how to make it happen. That's what we do. We create a lot of joint ventures. So you can tap, for example, we have in the printing business, we have one minority business enterprise in Seattle, Washington. This person, he's a Native American, and he's an expert in printing. And he is already on board in many large corporations. But he needs large quantities. He doesn't have the production arm. He needs all other things. And we found in Mexico about 4 or 5 printing companies, state-of-the-art technology, the best technology in Latin America. They have it. They're not huge, but they're very good. And they're working together right now. We're bringing them together. They're bidding with the, what is the baseball, what is it called? The National Baseball League? No, what is the name of the overall body for baseball? Major League Baseball, yes. And they're bidding for specific teams, for tickets and printing matters and so on. They're bidding with T-Mobile, trying to get some contracts for some designer things. So they're working on it, and we are facilitating the process. We're preventing from having cross-cultural clashes, cross-cultural communication problems, fairness in the how to get each one's share of the business, and all of those things, we're working with that. There's a lot of opportunities here for everybody. We just need to learn how to do it and go there. I will not get, these are the kind of the details and so on. I will not get into. We have a cloud platform for all the members to manage the project. Everybody logs in, even lawyers, accountants, everybody involved with the project. They have databases, the information, all the activities of the plan, how to track them down, who is doing what, virtual communications to keep the communication costs low. We can share video conferences and everything. All state-of-the-art technology using Microsoft, SharePoint, Exchange, Link, all of those tools. We have them ready. We work with them in this regard. Some examples of successful joint ventures in the U.S. and Mexico. I just mentioned the printing business with Seattle. We have another company from Mexico that is a fiber optics. They're looking for partners here in the U.S. They found a technology partner with 3M in Austin. And they are now working on how to import, export, and do things. The other company, it's a Texport Commercial. It's a startup in Laredo. You know, being the largest trucking point, crossing point in the world, there is a lot of trucks there. So they're establishing how to support maintenance and so on, Mexican trucks and trailers with agreement with Mexican companies. Simple things. We're not talking anything fancy. But there's a way to do it right and a way to get in trouble with these things. This other company, they are marketing promotional articles from the Corona beer through prestigious chain stores. They are in a joint venture with the New York LLC to bid for those projects and produce the materials, the merchandise, and everything to be sold here in the U.S. And this is, again, a joint effort between a Mexican and a U.S. entity. This company here is one of our proudest projects. This company is a meat processing plant. They established in San Antonio. They are selling to Costco and to other companies. It's a very, very startup successful, been like 4 years in the works already. This is another beautiful project we have. Again, it's a joint venture. It's Wagyu cattle breeding project for Kobe beef. Are you familiar with Kobe beef? Well, Wagyu is the Japanese cattle that produces this very expensive, very juicy beef. And they have a ranch in College Station, and they made a joint venture with a professor from Texas A&M. They have an embryology clinic there, and they have it in the same facilities. So the professor there does all the embryology genetics programs with the cattle, and they also serve all the clients in the U.S., so they co-invested. And the embryos produced here with this top quality cattle in College Station, they're frozen and sent back to Mexico. And they're implanted in surrogate cows that is low cost. And then the cows come back to the U.S. to be fed and so on, and then sold here in the U.S. market. So this particular project deserves the privilege of being on the front, in the cover of the American Cattleman. This is one of the most important magazine for ranchers and so on. And it is so interesting. So again, a joint venture. Faber Luxury, this is jewelry and diamonds. They're buying diamonds from a U.S. company and selling them to Mexico. Freezer, that's interesting. These produce, they trade with air conditioning products for trailers. And they buy it from a U.S. company and sell it in Mexico. So there's a lot of things you can do here. And the problem is always, it looks simple on the strategic level and the idea, but then the nitty-gritty details is where the devil is. And that's where things go wrong. And that's what we know how to prevent. And we will know, for example, we have what we call a company readiness check. We can tell you if a company is ready to go international or not from the get-go before you spend any money. And we will tell you what it takes to make it ready. Then you can come to us. We can even point to what consultant can help you get there. So we make sure that the highest success rate we have is because we check before we start and make sure everybody understands the nuances, the strengths you need to have, to point out your weaknesses and see this is what you need to fix, this is what you need to do, and then go international. And I would say if we can create, and this is my dream, we can create a network of medium-sized companies connected with the U.S. and Mexico. This is the best win-win situation for everybody. Jobs will be in place. Many of our mutual problems, illegal immigration, all that, will go away in a big part. And we will be truly partners in many ways, not only the big corporation, for example. We have the car manufacturing industry, which already is totally connected. Mexico produces 20% of the light vehicles of North America, but the part of the industry is also in Canada. So I must say, all these vehicles you see here coming through in the trains, they are 50% U.S. content. So it's not that the jobs are being, no. This is just using the strengths of each one. So high technology, high sophisticated products go to Mexico, they're assembled there, they bring back, and so on. So that's kind of my message. I truly believe this is something, a way we need to go. We need the cooperation of everybody to really make this thing happen. I appreciate the efforts of Orestes and David and the government of Texas. We are part of the team of the NAFTA office in Mexico with Monica Sanchez. We speak in all the Invest in Texas conferences in Mexico. We're going to be also hosting one in November in Dallas with Monica, and in Houston in January. So we're part of this, and we believe in this, and I just hope that this has helped with some idea to give you the potential that we have in front of us, and that there's a way to grab it and to make it more successful. I'll be here when we have questions. We'll be sitting here, and I'll just let the program continue. I appreciate your time very much.